What's going on, folks? Good afternoon, good evening, depends where you are. My name is Gaetan, and today is December 20th, and we are with Friends of the Congo with live and guest, but who's not really a guest, our executive director, Maurice Carney. Maurice, how are you?
Good man, good, good, doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing better. I'm just recovering and a lot of things happening.
Right, right.
But yeah,
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 we're one day out from the solstice, so
yeah,
it's a good time.
yeah.
Good time to recharge and
Yes.
regenerate, tap into the celestial energy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
man. Yeah. And then we got a lot to talk about, a lot to catch
Mhm.
up in terms. I feel like there's always like it's a constant, you know, uh constant running, like you running after you chasing like an information, like, oh, what's going on? A lot has been happening in the Congo, like always. And
Mm.
I personally feel overwhelmed sometimes when I got all these information. I'm trying to like filter them, analyze
Mhm.
them, and then trying to share with the group, share with you, and find ways also to share with the folks, the audience, and the followers and the supporters. It's hard. So part of the news that we're gonna discuss about obviously the Congo. We had the trip of the foreign minister of the minister of foreign affairs of the Congo. Went to New York. She spoke. We also had the Luanda Accord that has not really been getting much of attention with Paul Kagame not showing up, and
Mhm.
then there is also the Apple lawsuit, which has really captivated people's attention. And then also couple, big, I would say, news reports, because things that happen when it comes to financial aspect of the Congo, like the plunder of the Congo, we tend to look at outside, and we should, but
Mhm.
the things that happen internally sometimes get swept under the rug, like the system put in place, for example, to plunder and facilitate the plunder of the Congo is never talked about, and that's what
Mhm.
we're gonna discuss today. And hopefully people will be we find this interested, they're gonna follow, like, share it this space, and yeah, and just get the conversation going.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And well, a few things about that, Gaitan. We have to remember, we're talking about a country the size of Western Europe, right? Very diverse country, with, depending on where you are in the country, there are a range of issues that are at play, right? You could be in the east and just east of the Congo, and there'll be just one conversation that's pertinent to the east. And meanwhile, down in the south, there are a whole bunch of things happening. I think the key, as you said near the end, is to have an understanding of actually, it's an argument to look at the Congo more systemically and structurally, as opposed to episodically, right? Oh, there's a suit against Apple, and this happened or that happened, right? What we do know, right, and what's of keen importance to us is there structural forces at play around the Congo, systemic forces that
Hmm.
are affecting the lives of millions of Congolese, and the extent to which we can highlight those forces, right, that are at play, and more importantly, what Congolese on the front lines are doing to combat or confront those forces, right? So that to mitigate the deleterious impact that these forces have historically had on the people and continue to have in our contemporary era. So I
Yeah,
think, go ahead.
yeah. It's interesting that you're saying that, and I remember last time that you and I we had a live, and you said that the challenges of the Congo are systemic, so the response must be systemic as well. Uh,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
and and when it comes to the Congo, to me, it feels like we are always reacting to what's going on in the Congo. and that's why it's really really important to
Yes.
a
The-
movement, right? That will
yeah.
not just react, but I'll also actively pursue the mission or the objective of really liberating the Congo.
Absolutely. That's why it's so key that when we talk, here at Friends of the Congo, about building a global constituency for in support of folks on the ground who are acting, right? Who are exercising agency and have a clear vision of what it takes to transform this remarkable country, right? And it's a question of our building to a point where we reach a critical mass, right? A critical mass where it can be transformative for millions of people, right? That is what for the Basanja Coalition, for example, that we work with, what they're doing in the East, how that can be transformative for folks in the East, or they're working folks in the mining area, or the policies that they're pursuing, the initiatives that they're pursuing, how that can have an impact on people's lives so that local communities can be strengthened in a way
Hmm.
where they begin to set the agenda, right?
Hmm.
And we're saying that is the solution. The agenda being set by the people. Right now, the people are victims, right, of a capitalist agenda. They're victims of an imperialist agenda, right? They're victims of agents of neocolonialism like Paul Kagame of Rwanda, Yoweri Museveni, and his son of Uganda, right? So the battle,
Hmm.
really, the heart of the battle is to get to a point where the folks, the people, the masses, the Congolese masses are no longer victims of these forces that are working against them. That's why, when Lumumba, right, formed the Congolese national movement, he said, comrades, we're here for one reason only, a free
Hmm.
Congo, right? So that's very clear, a free Congo. And a free Congo is a Congo where the Congolese people control and determine the affairs of the Congo, not their local elites, not neighboring countries, not multinational corporations, not foreign governments, right? But the people themselves. And that's, you can't take that lightly, right? Because that's an enormous challenge. And
Hmm.
that's why we need, to mobilize people globally. That's why even Lumumba himself, when he wrote his last letter to his wife, Pauline, right? And he said it to the Congolese people. He said, he was speaking to the Congolese people. He said, we're not alone. Africa, Asia, free and liberated people from every corner of the world will be found by the side of the Congolese people. Right?
Hmm.
So that was his
Yeah.
prognostication. And that's what he understood and knew, that because of Congo's strategic location, because of its spectacular wealth, uh, because of its centrality to the future of the African continent, it's going to be attacked from all forces, all
Yeah.
sides, right? So
Yeah.
that's why we're building a global constituency, because the response internationally outside of the Congo is a people's response, a
Yes.
solidarity response, right?
Hmm.
So
And
so as we discuss Apple, or as we discuss the foreign ministers' trips to the U.S. and U.K., it's important that we keep in mind that we put it in the context, in the framing of this movement that we're building for change in the heart of the African continent.
yes, absolutely. And you mentioned Patrice Lumumba's letter, and 64 years later, after he wrote that letter to his wife Pauline, and 64 years later, after the Congo became independent, now we have a country led by a government. And then again, we can argue, and I'm really glad and happy to argue with whoever wants to debate with me on
And
that,
I know
on
you
the
are.
legitimacy on that current regime or administration. um, but the fact is, the Congo has a president. The Congo has ministers and people who are supposed to represent the people, right? And
Right.
outside, we have a diplomacy acting, or supposed to be acting. Let me just put
Hmm.
it that way. And the minister of foreign affairs, she went to New York. She talked at the UN.
Yes, yes.
And can you tell us more about that? Like
Yeah,
what
yeah.
happened?
She,
Yeah.
she, she was at the UN, and then of course she went to Washington D.C. and a few months or a month or so before that, she was in the UK at Chatham House. So she's been making the rounds in Western capitals, right? And the when you talk at the UN, it was a UN council meeting where she was
Hmm.
confronting the Rwandan ambassador and the Rwandan argument for being in the Congo, right? Where the Rwandan government
Hmm.
officials are making the argument that, in essence, they have to be in Congo to protect the interests, all right, or to protect a minority group in the Congo, right? So that, as Kagame himself said, that 1994 doesn't happen again, right? So she was
Yeah.
basically, um, basically dispelling, demystifying that argument, breaking that argument down, right? That the confronting the argument that Kagame was making, and she made an eloquent speech. I wouldn't do service. I wish we had it. We can put it up. I know you translated. Was it in English? Did she? It was in French, right? And you translated into English.
Yes. Let me
Yeah,
see. Yeah.
if you
Um.
have it and you can put it up, I think it's so worth people hearing from her, because she, and by the way, we're talking about Madame Therese Kaikwamba Wagner, right? The foreign
Hmm.
minister of the DRC, and she has a long history, in the diplomatic circles, right? She worked for the UN. She was president in the east of the Congo. She speaks English really well, so she can articulate the position of the government, and she's
Let's
probably
see.
the the leading spokesperson for the government. If you hear her speak, you're like, oh man, maybe she should be president. She's very
But
strong, and
the
and
thing,
she's no, no. I'm just
but the
I'm just
thing that
being
bothers me,
facetious. Go ahead, go ahead.
yes, yes, and the thing that bothers me with that is Congo has been really used to speeches, right?
Hmm.
And right now the Congolese people needs to go. They needs to see beyond words. They needs to see more than
Yeah,
just words. They
but
needs to
she
see
wasn't making
actions,
she
right?
wasn't making a
Actions being
speech.
done.
She wasn't making a speech, right? It's not like she was making a speech for the audience, for the crowd. She's been making arguments, right? Real concrete, precise, incisive arguments that lay waste, right, to the childish notions that are being propagated by Paul Kagame, right? Well, she's just breaking it down, and I hope you can pull it up to hear her retort, right? To Kagame. She lays out how the Rwandan government is breaking international law, right? By having their military
Hmm.
inside of the Congolese in a sovereign land, right? Whatever the rationale is for or the concerns that Rwanda has, and we won't even have to get into the concerns, but whatever they are, it doesn't warrant them sending 4,000 soldiers into the Congo to displace millions of Congolese, right? I mean, by which authority?
Yeah.
Congo is a sovereign land, right? Rwanda is a foreign nation. Why are your soldiers on Congolese soil? And whatever arguments you want to
Absolutely.
put up, right? And Gaitan, the reason why, or one of the key reasons why Kagame is able to get away with that is because he's an agent of the empire. He serves U.S. interests. He serves France's interests. He serves, the European Union's interest in the Congo. And Palestinian advocates and those advocating for Palestine movement understand that well, because Netanyahu is able to get away with the genocide because he serves U.S. interests, right? Because Israel serves the U.S. interest, because they got the backing of the empire. They got the backing of power, not the backing of an argument, not the backing of morality, not the backing of democratic state, right? Not the none of that the media puts out around these folks that the United
Hmm.
States, protect. United States arms, and United States finances, United States trains, and provide them with intelligence as they lay waste, to innocent people, whether it's in Palestine or in Eastern Congo. And then we see the U.S. when international bodies try to
Hmm.
bring them to account, right? Remember Linda Thomas Greenfield, right? Put her hands up, niet, right? They run diplomatic and political cover
Yeah.
for their war criminals. And Kagame is a war criminal. Netanyahu is a
Yes.
war criminal. They've committed
Yeah.
war crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes of genocide, but for the cover of the United States, right? They would be, in the egg, right? Uh, in
Yeah.
jail
And
for the crimes that they've committed.
now I want to
So she
interrupt, but
breaks
I
that
did
down, and
find the video.
she gets into
Yeah.
that. Yes.
Yeah, and just for the to give the context to the audience, I'm gonna play the video right now. Let's see. Let's go.
Ou de différents bilans. Ces faits, Madame la Présidente, ne relèvent pas de spéculation. Ils sont documentés, corroborés et gravés dans les rapports des Nations Unies. Je prends néanmoins note de la posture du Rwanda qui doute de l'objectivité des experts. Le Rwanda avance que la République démocratique du Congo est confrontée à de nombreux groupes armés. Et oui, c'est un fait. Mais cet aveu de la complexité de notre contexte sécuritaire ne saurait servir de justification à ses propres violations de notre souveraineté. Ce n'est pas parce que d'autres défis existent que son soutien au M23 ou la présence de ses troupes en République démocratique du Congo en deviennent excusables. Je le dis avec force, l'appréciation du Rwanda sur nos défis internes ne lui donne aucun droit d'y intervenir. Le Rwanda invoque aussi l'idée que le M23 représenterait des communautés. Permettez-moi de poser une question simple à cette Assemblée. Depuis quand des massacres, des déplacements forcés et la réorganisation démographique de territoires sont-ils des moyens légitimes pour répondre à des revendications ethniques ou sociales? Le M23 ne défend aucune cause, il exécute une stratégie dictée par les intérêts du Rwanda. Le groupe d'experts l'a démontré, il ne s'agit pas de défendre des minorités, mais de contrôler des ressources et d'affaiblir la souveraineté de la République démocratique. Enfin, le Rwanda prétend que les mesures qu'il qualifie de défensives seraient légitimées par des propos tenus par des responsables. Je rejette fermement cette allégation. Aucun propos quelconque ne peut justifier les massacres de civils, les pillages de ressources ou l'occupation de territoires. Rien, absolument rien, ne peut légitimer les crimes de guerre, les crimes contre l'humanité, la violation de la charte des nations. Détrompez-vous, monsieur le représentant. Le Rwanda n'est pas et ne sera jamais le gendarme de la région des Grands Lacs. Si le Rwanda souhaite prouver sa crédibilité en tant qu'acteur de paix, qu'il commence par honorer ses engagements dans le processus. 4 jours plus tard, ils incluent toujours vos actes. Et ils arrivent seulement après insistance de la part de la République démocratique du Congo et du médiateur. La République démocratique du Congo reste fermement engagée dans le processus de loi, convaincue qu'il constitue la voie la plus prometteuse vers une résolution durable du conflit. Tout au long de ce processus, notre posture a été constante, constructive, respectueuse des engagements pris et résolue à œuvrer pour la paix. Ce Conseil a un rôle central à jouer pour garantir que toutes les parties respectent leurs obligations et contribuent à cet objectif commun. Madame la Présidente, Mesdames et Messieurs, le peuple congolais, dans toutes ses composantes, aspire à la paix et à la stabilité. Ces aspirations légitimes ne sauraient être réduites au silence par des stratégies de division et de domination. Mon pays est résolu à protéger ses citoyens, à préserver son intégrité territoriale et à bâtir un avenir où la souveraineté des États est respectée et non manipulée. Nous ne demandons pas de faveur, nous exigeons que le droit international soit respecté, que la souveraineté de la République démocratique du Congo soit protégée et que les responsabilités des actes commis soient pleinement assumées.
And there you go.
Yeah, so you can see her
That's
argument is
that was a
just
speech.
precise, it's incisive, her logic
Yeah.
is impeccable, and at the heart of what she's saying, whatever your concerns, whatever your fears, it doesn't justify you breaking international law, right? And being and occupying land in the Congo, right? Whatever it is that you're arguing about, right? That you it's
Mhm.
not a defensive effort that you're undertaking right now, but rather it's an offensive effort that's pillaging Congo's resources, right? Occupying Congo's land, killing Congolese women and children, and displacing millions of people. And that's a war crime. That's a crime against humanity, right? So she makes it the argument exquisitely, and just totally destroys whatever Kagame puts up with his nonsense and his and his ministers. So irrespective of what you think about the Chesekedi government. That's the most compelling argument I've heard coming from the government.
Yeah.
In undressing Rwanda and their the propositions that they're putting forward as to why they are occupying Congo's land, right, and stealing Congo's resources.
And here's my perspective, and I'm speaking as an activist, as a Congolese national myself.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, this speech was powerful, and but something interesting that you said that uh make me even more skeptical
Mm.
toward that government. You said that and that's a fact too,
Mm-hmm.
that what the Rwanda's regime led by Paul Kagame has been doing for the past 20 years is war.
Almost 30
Yeah,
now.
almost 30 years, almost, yeah, 3 decades,
Mm-hmm.
is uh, war crime. It's crime against humanity. It's genocide. And that's not even us saying that.
That's what the UN
Ma-
says.
the UN is saying that. Mapping
Yeah.
Report 2010 and Friends of the Congo actually, in that documentary, Congo, the Congo Crisis Uncovering the Truth, y'all talk about that. Brother
Right.
Kambales and yourself, and you guys talk about that report that explicitly talks about in length how Paul Kagame is or could be found guilty if brought in front of the court of war crime, crime against humanity, and
But
genocide.
not only
And
not only that, Gaitan, hold on to your thought a
mhm,
little bit, right?
mhm,
There was an international arrest warrant out for 40 of Rwanda's top officials, right?
yeah,
From the Spanish courts under this
yes,
principle
in
called,
2008,
right, this
yeah.
principle called, what is it? Universal or jurisdiction, something of that nature, where a state can bring a charge against officials of another state. They couldn't. The head of state is excluded from that. They couldn't bring it the charges against Kagame.
Hmm.
And in fact, one of the Rwandan officials that the
James
international
Kabarebe.
arrest warrant was out against, right? He was
Hmm.
arrested in the UK. I don't recall his name right now, but he was arrested in the UK under the charge, that was carried out by the Spanish courts under the principle of universal jurisdiction, right? And
Hmm.
guess who came to defend this Rwandan general that was arrested in the UK under the charge for the crimes that was committed in Rwanda and Congo, and none other
Uncle
than
Sam.
the wife of Tony Blair, right?
Oh, okay. All
Former
right.
prime minister
Wow.
of the
Wow. Of
UK,
the
right?
UK.
His wife came
Wow.
to defend this war criminal, right? Which ultimately got off. But it goes to so I just wanted to point that out that
Hmm.
we're not just speculating here. We're
Yes.
talking about hard facts. Arrests have been made. Charges have been made for the crimes that have been committed, but for the
And to,
cover that
yeah.
they get from the Tony Blairs, the Bill Clintons, all in the U.S. government, they would all be in jail for the crimes that
And
they've
to you,
committed in
and
Rwanda and the Congo.
yes, and to your point, in 2008, the same jurisdiction, the judge, I think, was in Spain as well, issued arrest warrant against James Kabarebe, who was at the time, who was for many years, right? He was the chief of staff of the Congolese army that they just put in power with AFTL, and he was also the advisor in charge of security of Paul Kagame, and also I think he was also like the head of the army. And right now he's in charge. He's a Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Cooperation. He was on that list of the people that was supposed to be arrested, but that somehow got withdrew. But the point that I really wanted to
Mhm.
make is what I find really fascinating in the midst of all the facts that we have regarding the Congo, the crimes that we have that can literally um, put behind bars the people who have been committing atrocities. I'm talking about Paul Kagame, for example, James Kabarebe.
Mhm.
The Congolese government have not done any action to the ICJ at the extent that we've seen South Africa. And I had a conversation with people because people need to know that
Mhm.
when talking about ICJ, they talk about jurisdiction.
And you're
Oh,
talking about the
bound
International Court of Justice.
the International Court of Justice. Yes, thank you. And people are like, oh, but Rwanda is not signatory of the treaties of Rome, so they cannot be trial. The 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 Palestinians changed the game, or South Africa changed the game.
Mm-hmm.
The US changed the game when they decided to go after, for example, uh, Putin in Russia with the ICC, because Russia is not signatory, but the Ukraine is.
Right, and
And
that's
it,
the International Criminal Court.
yes, the
Mm-hmm.
International Criminal Court. And but when it comes to the ICJ, Palestine and Gaza and the West Bank and all these territories, because Palestine has a legitimate government that is, acknowledged by the international community. They are signature of the treaty, is and of the ICJ, and I believe Israel is not.
Mm-hmm.
But South Africa was, because they're also part of that treaty, they were able to say, you know what, on behalf, and I think at that time, Palestine was only observers, that they couldn't really do anything to the UN, at the UN. They
Mm-hmm.
were only observing. So South Africa, on behalf of Palestine, they took that action. When it comes to the Congo has literally full membership at the UN, so they can, if really this government wants something to be done, they can, they should, and they must bring a case at the ICG. They have not done that.
Mm-hmm.
They did. I need to point it out. They did, uh, came up with a case. It was in 2004, if I'm not mistaken. President Joseph Kabila at the time,
Mm-hmm.
he submitted this government submitted something to the ICC, the International Criminal Court,
To the
against
ICJ, the International Court of
ICJ
Justice.
as well. Yes.
In
Okay.
2000, yeah, because in 2005, the International Court of Justice ruled in favor of the Congo. Right, the Congo had brought case against Rwanda and
And
Uganda. Right,
Uganda. Yes.
but because Rwanda wasn't party to the International Court of Justice, they weren't pursued. But Uganda was pursued, and the International Court of Justice in 2005 ruled in favor of the Congo. The charges that were brought against Uganda for war crimes, crimes against humanity, plunder in the Congo, and it ruled that Congo was entitled to billions of dollars in
Right.
reparations, right, as a result of Uganda's aggression against the Congo, which is not at the same level as Rwanda's aggression against the
Mm-hmm.
Congo, right?
Yeah.
And the billions of dollars was whittled
Was
down to
negotiated to
negotiated down to
360
what,
millions. 360
360,
million dollars.
which,
And
and some of it was paid this spring, that Uganda paid,
yes, they
right?
have been doing
Yeah,
installment, I think
but but
60 millions of installment, I believe.
and the interesting thing about this is we have people in Kisangani, right, who were the victims of the 6 Day War. That's the
Never
war
got anything.
between Rwanda and Uganda, and soldiers in the Congo. Like, you have these. I mean, people say things about the Congo, right? I share with folks all the time. You don't have to exaggerate anything about the Congo. You tell just the way it is,
Hmm.
and it's outrageous what's happening, right? And just normally, you don't have to say 18 million people have died in the Congo, right? Or 10 million people died. There's no data to back that up. The fact, once you get into the millions, Gaitan, it doesn't matter if it's 1 million or 20 million, right?
Hmm.
When you get into
Yeah.
the millions of people who have perished, right, in somewhere on this planet, that ought to be enough to trigger some response, emergency response, on the part of your
And
own government, on the part of the
hmm
so-called international community, on the part of people throughout the globe. So the both historically and contemporarily, right?
hmm
This nature and the scale of the atrocities, of the plunder that has unfolded in the Congo, right, is
hmm
such that, by virtue of you just articulating it as it is, it's outrageous, to the point where it's a scar on the conscience of humanity, right?
yes.
That we see
And
what's unfolding in the Congo continue to happen.
and also, to your points, talking about, and something really really interesting, that people, I believe, don't know, is that when the IC, or when the Uganda paid the first installment, $60 million, summer of 2022, at the same time President Tshisekedi signed a contract of building roads with Uganda. and the price tag of that road was the exact same price, 300, around $300 million. And
Mm-hmm.
something very interesting that I found out when I organized like a space with Ugandan activists, the company in charge of building that roads right now between Congo and Uganda
Mm-hmm.
belongs or is tied to the current president of Uganda, Museveni.
Mm-hmm.
Because whenever the states is trying to like audit them, they received a personal letter from Uganda President Yoweri Museveni telling them to like not look into that. So there was many speculations and people within the civil society of Uganda who were saying that in the space, and I'm just like, wait, what? So they're gonna pay us $360 million, and then we're gonna pay them back to build roads, and obviously those roads is to allow mostly the minerals coming out. But I was really, when I was talking about the case that Joseph Kabila also introduced to I was talking about the ICC particularly as well,
Okay.
because he
Mm-hmm.
also did that.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been pending, right, like until today. And then Kabila and then Tshisekedi, when he came to power, he decided to be friends with Paul Kagame and even calling him brother. And in
Mm-hmm.
2022, his administration filed like a lawsuit, if I can say, to the ICC, the International Criminal Court. But they only kept it to 2022 until today. And
Mm-hmm.
then people were like, including myself, why not 2021? Why not 2000? Why not 2006 when CNDP was born? Why not 2009 when the
Mm-hmm.
M23 was born?
Mm-hmm.
Like why leaving out so many years of oppression, of aggression, of plundering? And and to me, if this government is really sincere, it has the tools. He has, I don't want to say the legitimacy to do that, but they have the tool. They are recognized right now, that we like it or not, to be the sole representative of the Congolese people
Yeah.
on the international
Level.
arena. So to me, I just don't understand why we are not actively pursuing that, but we're gonna have a lawsuit, for example, and that's the thing that has been reading the mind and the screen of everyone, like a lawsuit against Apple,
Mm.
which I think, and that's also coming back to our discussion last time
Right.
when you
Right.
mentioned that quote from Antonio Guterres saying that it was in 2008 at the
Mm-hmm.
Financial Times that the international community has consistently and
Systematically. Mm-hmm.
systematically plundered the
Mm-hmm.
Congo, the
Mm-hmm.
international community, and talking about everyone and not just Apple.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to remind folks, and maybe you can actually, I want you to remind folks the difference between this particular lawsuit and
Mm.
then the lawsuit that Friends of the Congo supported
Mm.
and advocated for,
Right.
fought for last year with the attorney Terry Collinsworth. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. In Terry Collingsworth is an attorney with the International Rights Advocates institution, organization based in Washington, and they filed suit uh, against 5 tech companies in 2019 on behalf of 16 or so Congolese children on their families. They filed suit against Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Dell, right? And they could have filed suit against a whole range of companies, but strategically, it made sense. Those 5 made sense, and they brought the suit against those companies for sourcing minerals from the Congo that used child labor. And uh, the case was kicked out of the courts by a Trump judge, and Attorney Collingsworth appealed and got the case reinstated for the judges to look at it. He did that in 2022, December of 2022, and in March of 2024, the court came back with a ruling, and they ruled in favor of the companies and against the children of the Congo. And they
Hmm.
basically, the essence of the ruling was that the companies that were being sued, right, they said that they weren't in a venture in the Congo. You know, they're buying minerals just like anybody could buy minerals, but they weren't in a venture. Even though the court, the three-judge panel, and this is in the District of Columbia appeals court, the circuit court, uh, said that the plaintiffs, right, had standing. That means they had grounds to bring a suit, right? But it was just that these companies weren't in the venture, as the court said. However, interestingly enough, Tesla is in a venture in the Congo. They're in a venture with Glencore, right? Tesla sources its cobalt from Glencore, the mining company, in the Congo.
Yeah.
It's just that Tesla entered the agreement after the case. After the case was the suit was brought. It was in 2019 that the case was presented to the court, and I think Tesla entered into the agreement with Glencore in 2021. So that case it would be anachronistic for Tesla to be for that to be presented to the courts. And we spoke to Attorney Collinsworth, and he's looking at other measures with his team now. Now that suit in 2019 dealt mainly with the south of the Congo industrial mining. This suit with the against Apple in the Belgian and French court is dealing primarily with the east of the Congo and the sourcing of minerals, illicit sourcing of minerals from the east. And they're basically making the argument that those the companies that the companies the companies that the companies that the smelters basically that provide Apple with its minerals, they were involved in trafficking of minerals out of the Congo, and one company for example, or association, the International Tin Association, they call it ITSI, they were tagging minerals in the Congo that they were saying was conflict free, right, and transporting them to Rwanda. And apparently Apple was sourcing minerals from the smelters that ITSI had certified to say that these minerals are conflict free. But investigation was done, found that ITSI was basically fabricating this. They're just putting tags on bags without any concrete documentation that they were conflict free. And I think this one, the way it's presented, I think it's a criminal suit that's being brought against Apple. It was a civil suit that was being brought against the 5 tech companies in Washington D.C. But for me, I always go, Gaetan, to the just presumption of optimum success, right? Say the Congolese government is optimally successful, the courts and everything rule in favor of Apple. What would that accrue? How will that accrue to the benefit of the women who are in Bulengo? Does that mean that they get to go back to their villages, right? Those who are in Rosario, do they get to go now that Apple is sued and the government wins, right? Say we're just presuming. What kind of impact does that have on the people who want to go back home, right? Our experience has been, right, in dealing with this question of the conflict. It's not, and I've shared this with you before, these certification schemes, if these certification schemes are tight and, vacuum sealed and everything, right, that doesn't change the dynamics, right? The capitalist system, right, where the Congolese are not the primary beneficiaries. What you're basically doing, the certification schemes, in essence, is certify the plunder of the Congo.
Exactly.
Right? Because that doesn't mean there's a certification scheme in place. Well, now Congolese are now controlling their resources, or they're the primary beneficiaries of the resources. It just means like, business can continue as usual, and the consumer in the U.S. and elsewhere can feel satisfied, like, oh, no, I can buy this phone that's not tainted by conflict, that's not tainted by child labor. But the Congolese people are still catching hell because they're trapped in a system of poverty that's a product of, decades of plunder, where the people have been rendered impoverished and dependent. So I don't see how a certification scheme or a lawsuit, how that's a path to liberation, right? Or even to ending the conflict, right?
Yeah,
Even the Office of Management and
and
Budget in the United States published a report this year that said these certification scheme has
yeah,
had
saying
no
that
impact
Apple is not.
whatsoever.
Yeah, they said that Apple has no impact. Exactly,
Yeah, there's
exactly.
no,
And and
so
I,
oh, go ahead, got time.
what I wanted to say, to me, it's kind of funny because I asked myself if the government, the Congress government, is really thinking through when they do things, or are they doing things just because it's popular, right? Because you mentioned something very, very important. If the US government came forward and said it was this year that they do not find, and we talked about it, you just mentioned that they did not find that the Apple is somehow involved or directly involved to that, essentially exonerating Apple and said, hey, Apple is fine, right? Because really, Apple also represent the US interest if one really thinks
Yeah,
about that.
it's a U.S.
But
corporation. Yeah.
exactly. But something that Friends of the Congo posted, and I don't know if you all can see. Can you see the screen right now?
Yes,
Yeah, the
companies using
companies,
cobalt.
the different companies using cobalt, and that's something that Friends of the Congo came up with, and
And that's an old list. That's an
that
old
yeah,
list.
yeah, there are more companies out
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah,
But it's just not it isn't just Apple. It's BMW, Daimler, Dell, Ford, and all of them, right? And more on that list. But then you think about it, why would they go only after Apple? Because if really we are looking, or we if really one is seeking for justice, this justice cannot be partial. This justice cannot be incomplete, right? We need to actively seek true justice, and true justice is what's the end goal of it. And
yeah.
also, like, we're gonna go after Apple, good, assuming that the Congolese government wins, right?
Right.
It means that there will be Apple will be forced to compensate the Congo in terms of probably talking about millions of dollars, right? Who is going to handle that money when I know, for example, that there is this law that my fellow Congolese gathered within the Congolese Action Youth platform that came up with the Genocast campaign 10 years ago, 11 years ago. They were like, hey, we need to really look at the Congo as what's going on in the Congo from the Leopold II era until today as a genocide, but not just like a regular genocide, but actually reconsider, re-examine even the whole definition of the word genocide, because what's happening in the Congo is a genocide for economic gain, where people are being slaughtered, are being pushed out of the lands, are being killed, are being trapped literally because of what they have under the feet, like the minerals, right? So the Congolese governments, being what they do best, they stole that idea and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna recognize, Congo, the Genocost as national holidays or whatever, like a commemoration, right?" And they wrote a law they called Genocost law that was written in 2021, I think, signed into law 2022, or maybe it's 2022, 2023. Don't quote me on that. But in that law, there was a specific article in that law that talks about using mining revenues, 5% of the revenues in mines, right? That will go toward the two institutions that were created to compensate the victims of those atrocities. And one of them is Fonarev, that is right now under the leadership of the First Lady, the wife of the president. And one of it's a Observatoire de Dépenses Publiques. Not really sure how to say that in English right now, but there are essentially auditing. It's a nonprofit that audits all the expenses that the government makes, and they determine and they establish in a report published this year that every month FONA have received from the mining sector $21 million every month. And $21 million that they have been receiving every month from the mining sector. But then when they look at how much has been allocated for the victim, they barely received $0.6 per person. And we're talking about at least 7 million people. On top of that, we also have over 400 houses for refugees or that the government built. Those houses, 450 to be exact, they were built, right, to house refugees, to house the people who have been displaced. And out of those 450 houses, Brother Moise, zero have toilets, bathrooms, zero. And that's how much they make. So when I look at this Apple lawsuit, like you said, right? Like really, like we are tackling something, but without going into to the root of the issue. Because once if Apple is found guilty and Apple pays reparation, where would that money go? Who's gonna handle that money? And we see how the Congo has been led for the past 2 decades now. It's clear that the Congolese people are not beneficiary of anything.
Absolutely. There are two things that struck me around the lawsuit, Gaitan. One, there was a lawsuit against these companies um, that was standing for 5 years, and the Congolese government didn't say anything. They didn't come to the side. They didn't provide any support. There wasn't any, not that I'm aware of, anyways. Right?
The Congolese government never reached out to Friends of the Congo.
Well, they wouldn't reach out to us. They'd reach out to Attorney Collingsworth. They may say, "Hey, Attorney Collingsworth, we'd like to provide support to the children that you're bringing a suit on behalf of and their families. Are they okay? We'd like to protect them, make sure that none of that happened."
Wow.
Right? None of that happened. Right? So, in addition to that, Gaitan, at the same time that the Congolese government is going after Apple, right? In a lawsuit, they hired a lobby firm in Washington D.C. Called Mercury Public Affairs. Paid almost $1 million. This is the Jacquemin, the state mining company, paid almost $1 million to hire this lobby firm in Washington D.C. to lobby on behalf of the Congolese government. Right? Do you know what one of the charges of the lobby firm is on behalf of the Congolese government? To get the sanctions lifted off of Dan Gertler. So here it is.
God.
Then an Israeli billionaire who's plundered the Congo to the tune of $1.6 billion within a 2-year period, according to the United States government Department of Treasury, that led them to sanction this individual, right? Who's responsible for the plunder of the Congo, according to the US government. But then the United States government, right? The United States government hires a lobby firm to get the sanctions lifted off of this individual, right? And at the same time, you say we're going to sue Apple, right, on behalf of the Congolese people. This is something. I mean, it doesn't jive there, right? So, in any case, I think really this past week, what is really of note that we think is really critical was the Luanda peace process in Luanda, which is named after, Luanda, the capital of Angola, where the president, João Lourenço, is been appointed or charged by the African Union to lead this peace process, to bring, a resolution to the conflict in the east of the Congo. And they were supposed to meet. The President Tshisekedi and President Kagame was supposed to meet in Luanda this past week. And President Kagame didn't show up. It was billed as, the meeting that's going to resolve the issues that are between the two governments. According to the Rwandan government, they're saying that, the Congolese government is working with, the FDLR, the Democratic Force for Liberation of Rwanda, and that's why they have their soldiers in the Congo. And the Congolese government said, well, you're back in the M23, and also you need to get your soldiers out of the Congo. And even if the Congolese government was working with the FDLR, let's just say there's a case, right? And the foreign minister responded to that. All this is happening on Congolese soil. You know, Congo is not inside Rwanda with militia groups inside Rwanda, but Rwanda is inside Congo with militia groups inside of the Congo, right? So Paul Kagame didn't show up to this big meeting that was supposed to happen, which was supposed to advance the path to peace. Now, I don't know why he didn't show up, but what happened during the Biden administration, you had the National Security Council of the United States government that was working with the intelligence officers of Rwanda and the DRC and establishing um, ceasefire deals, exchanging information, assuring that information was shared between the two. And the Biden administration was really pushing, right, to try and get some kind of deal worked out. Because for the Biden administration, they had two concerns. One, they wanted to get access to critical minerals, clear the path for U.S. investors to come in. And two, there are two fronts that they're involved in that's hotspots, you know, Ukraine and Palestine. And they didn't want to break out of a third major front, right? So they were very active diplomatically. Now, you know, the Democrats, they lost the presidential elections. And Donald Trump is going to be inaugurated in January. Something in Kagame is like, Trump is coming in, right? Trump is not going to be as vested as the Biden administration was in putting pressure on the Rwandan government. So they're like, you know,
Mhm.
likely Trump will likely like, you know, do what you you do whatever you want. You know, you guys are all, you know, what he call whatever, you know, derogatory name he gave to the African countries, anyways. So my sense is right. Uh, just looking at it, that Kagame said, I'm going to take my chances with Trump. I can keep doing what I do under Trump administration. Don't have to worry about much pressure being put on me from the U.S. government. I have a diplomatic offensive that I got going in the United States. And the U.S.
Mhm.
Congress has established what they call the Rwanda Caucus, right? Who will be lobbying. These are members of Congress who have established a caucus, in essence, to support the Rwandan government. So, and this is, you know, this is all unfolding when you have, you know, the Rwandan soldiers inside of the Congo displacing millions of people. So that's my sense, anyways, as to why that, you know, that may have Kagame didn't show up, broken down. He's not going to be getting the kind of pressure from the Trump administration that he had gotten from the Biden administration. What that says to us as activists is that we have to step up to the pressure. We have to continue to push that narrative, especially the narrative and the framing that you know, Foreign Minister, you know, Kai Kwamba laid out at the UN, because part of this too is the you know, the public perception and the narrative and the story. That's so critical that we push back on what Rwanda is putting forward, that we articulate what's happening in the Congo, you know, and the devastating impact that that's having on Congolese women and children. It's vital that we're beating the drums. We're out there pushing this narrative, talking about the war crimes being committed, crimes against humanity, crimes of genocide, plunder being committed with U.S. tax, with the support of U.S. tax dollars. Right. So I think that's the most critical avenue that we can, you know, we can engage in around this situation to try and advance, you know, peace and stability in the east of the Congo from the outside, anyways.
And not just criminal uh cases, right? Like you mentioned, crimes against humanity. I also want to go ahead and mention plundering and the financial crime, because the Congo again is a $24 trillion worth of minerals, right? And right now, and we've seen that, and we talked about the Lobito corridor last time, how there is this competition between China and the United States happening in the Congo. And my take on this Luanda Accord, or this Luanda process or accord that Paul Kagame did not show up to, is that he's noticing a certain shift, because we do have to recognize that the U.S. is shifting away a little bit, not too much, but a little bit from Rwanda, because now they made Kenya as, you know, as a center of interest in the Great Lake region. The And then they also made Angola recently, right? President of Kenya was received at the White House. The president of Angola was received at the White House. When President Biden came in Africa for the first time in 2015, he went to Angola. So I think there is this desire to distance the U.S. from the U.S. perspective, to distance themselves from Rwanda. So, as you know, not trying to be in this parrot mind, but if I had to, in Paul Kagame's strategies, like, how can I remain relevant? I need to continue to push militias. I need to continue to fund militias that are going to somehow include me to whatever accord, to whatever discussion they're going to have. And that's what he has been doing. That's what he did with the M23. That's what he did with the CNDP. That's what he did with the RCD. That's what he did with the FDL. So to me, I see this as an attempt, a desperate attempt for Paul Kagame to maintain his grip in the Great Lake region, so that he can tell the U.S., look, you see, I've told you, like, you cannot deal with Congo without going through me. I think he's just trying to make himself relevant, and it's up to first the Congolese people to realize what's going on with the government. And I think many folks are already seeing this, what's going on, the double standard, the kind of like hypocrisy in language that we've seen. The government says that they're not going to negotiate with M23, but at the same time they are open to uh an environment where they can be discussing with the M23 along with other militia groups. So to me, that's kind of interesting to see how, or what the future of the Congo will be under Trump, because, like, as you mentioned, Trump just only care about American interest, and right now the American interest is focused on the Congolese minerals.
Yeah, I mean, I do think though, however, Kagame is very much relevant, Gaitan, in the sense that the European Union keeps giving him money. He's the number one contributor of troops to the United Nations on the African continent. He's
Yeah,
dispatched to Mozambique, and he's at service. He's at service for the empire, and
still,
as
yeah.
long as he's at service for the empire, he'll be relevant. Especially with he's built a mercenary force, right? So he's at service.
It's hard. I get it. It's okay. But yeah,
Right, we got
I
started a
keep
little
going.
later in the cruise here, so
It's
mate,
okay. It's all
yeah,
right. I will understand soon. In the
yes,
near future,
yes,
I'll have kids too, so I understand. So I'm enjoying right now.
enjoy the
But
solitude.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
But like, but in terms of me, what bothers me when we talk, or when I see talks about the Congo,
Mhm.
what bothers me is that we present the Congo as this charity work, right? Of just giving to help the people, but not mobilizing enough to actually topple down a system that has been exploiting the Congo. And that system, like we mentioned, is not just external, it's also internal, it's also regional, right? And what is being done to highlight those system of oppression? What is being done by other organizations? And to me, the answer is like not enough, or nothing at all. Because when we talk about, you mentioned about Don Gertler and how he's been sanctioned, and in one of my interviews or conversation, I will say, with Dr. Erica from Cocktail and Capitalism, we did talk about that, and we did talk about how the US really is looking into lifting the sanctions to Don Gertler. And I first was like, why? But before I give my take, I really want the audience to hear your perspective. Why do you think the US is actively looking to lift sanctions?
I mean, you don't necessarily have to ask me why I think that way. You know, the New York Times, Bloomberg News, Wall Street Journal, they've all reported it that Gertler has got a lock on critical concessions to critical minerals in the Congo, the kind of lock where he makes $200,000 a day at least. It's even more than that in
Paid by the
royalties,
government.
right? Right, in
Hmm.
royalties, right? So the United States, you know, is making this transition. You know, they passed a number of bills into law in the U.S. The CHIPS Act, the Infrastructure Act, the Inflation
Hmm.
Reduction Act. All of those deal elements of it. Those laws deal with, you know, the transition from fossil fuels to you know, green energy,
Good
right?
energy.
Renewable energy.
Yeah.
And in order, as we know, this industry, this new green energy industry, is powered by batteries, rechargeable batteries, and they demand critical minerals, the nickel and the copper and the cobalt and so forth. So they're trying to get access to those minerals and provide a path for U.S. Companies to come in and invest in the Congo. U.S. companies are not coming in now to the extent that they would, they believe, because there's a corrupt figure that's got, you know, a monopoly on these concessions. That's Dan Gertler. So if they get Gertler out of the way, then other U.S. corporations, you know, the Black Rocks and all those big corporations who are involved
Hmm.
to some extent in the Lobito quarter can come and invest in the Congo, in minerals in the Congo. So that's what the newspapers are reporting.
Yes. And my take on that is the way I look at this, why the US is bringing Dan Gertler back in the game. It's because of China. It's because of the fact that we have been a corrupt regime right now leading the country. And honestly, under that system or under those circumstances, China has been thriving. Like, you talking about corrupting or bribing people, China is the best, right? Like, because obviously it's harder. I'm not saying that there is no corruption here, but it's kind of harder to like openly bribe people. But China, they
I
don't
know,
they
but
don't care.
the U.S. has done it. I don't know if China's best. Remember, right? The
Yeah.
Department of Justice fined Ziff, a Wall Street hedge fund, right, for
Hmm.
providing millions
Correct.
of dollars in slush fund to Dan Gertler, who then went and corrupted Congolese officials to acquire mining concessions for pennies on the dollar. So
Hmm.
I don't know if China's got anything on the U.S. when it comes to Wall Street corruption. You know, at least not based on the evidence
Yes.
that we've seen. But
Yeah.
you are on point that,
What?
you know,
Hmm.
Congo itself was formed, Gaitan, in a geostrategic context, right? Remember, Congo, modern state of Congo is not something that was issued from Congolese coming together and saying, we want to form this state, right? The modern state of Congo came out of, you know, Otto von Bismarck and Germany and 14 other nations, including the United States, saying, we're going to form this Congo Free State in the heart of the African continent. We're going to give it to King Leopold II as his private property. This is the blueprint. This is the
Hmm.
DNA of the Congo, right? So,
Yeah.
and that hasn't fundamentally changed, where Congo has been at the center of geostrategic intrigue for, you know, up to 140 years. So this is just the latest manifestation of that, where we see the United States trying to compete with China, and I don't know, not only the United States, but you have the United States, you have European Union, you have the G7, which includes, you know, Canada and Japan, all coming together, you know, around this Lobito quarter under the auspices of the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, which is the West, US G7, European Union's
Hmm.
response to China's Belt and Road Initiative. Now, we don't know how successful they're going to be in responding, but in all of this, though, what our concern should be, our primary concern, should be about the Africans. How do Africans organize themselves so that they can protect their interests? And so that they can be a major player on the global scene, just beyond just outposts for natural resources that
Hmm.
power these industries. So that's our primary concern. How does Africa, African nations get in that position? We see some
Yeah.
rumblings in West Africa, with Mali and Niger and Burkina Faso.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
really too early to tell how that's going to unfold. But certainly the path to resource sovereignty is the path that ought to be pursued, where it doesn't matter whether it's Russia, China, United
Yeah.
States, European Union come to Africa. You come and you deal on African terms, where
I
the
Yeah.
population, the masses of Africans, the oppressed masses, the working class, their interests are an integral part of negotiations that are taking place, so that they're beneficiaries. I'm not just talking about beneficiaries in terms of money or whatever, but in terms of skills transfer, in terms of technology, in terms of training, the whole bit, right? That you have these leaders are going out and negotiating, engaging on behalf of their people. And the only way that can happen effectively on the African continent is through a Pan-African Union. I know they have the Continental Free Trade Area that's been voted on and approved by a
Hmm.
lot of African nations. And that's really a slow path towards a United States of Africa. But that's really where African interests, are to be right now.
Yeah.
Angola, DRC, Zambia, Zimbabwe, all ought to be pushing for a Pan-African Union to serve the interests of the African people.
And brother Maurice, you are 100% correct. And don't get me wrong. And I'm not giving in any way a pass to the U.S. government, right? What I'm saying, and there's actually this interesting quote. I forgot who the author is, and that quote says that every system is perfectly designed to achieve the result it gets. And you talk extensively about how the Congo was designed to be plundered, and how do you design a country to be plundered. Lumumba also talked about it in his letter. He talks about corrupting the elites in the Congo, correct? So,
It's the Binza Boys, created by the Central Intelligence Agency.
yeah.
Highly recommend to folks to look up the Binza Boys. It's the Binza Boys type that's ruling the Congo today. They got rid of Lumumba, the Lumumba type, the democratic,
Hmm.
nationalist, Pan Africanists. They were dismantled and eradicated. And what has reigned on the Congo since the 1960s to the present are the Binza Boys. It's the Binza Boys leadership that's in the Congo to this day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you have that corrupt elites right now that is allowing, for the past, I would say, ever since Lumumba was assassinated on January 17th, 1961. So we have seen that succession of leaders, non-elected, who rigged election, who killed, plundered, and the current government is
Who
not
serve who
different.
serve foreign interests first and foremost,
Exactly, they all serve for an
not their
interest.
local interests.
And in that environment created or designed by European, by the United States, you have today a China that the US is fighting. There was a commission at the Senate, and I think I don't remember if a law passed about that, but how to combat China's influence in the Congo. The Lobito corridor is part of it.
Yeah, there
The
are two
Lobito,
bills introduced in the U.S. Congress around that. How to
exactly,
combat
yeah,
China in the Congo and secure Congo's minerals for U.S. strategic interests.
exactly.
Congressman Christopher Smith from New Jersey and Congressman John James from Michigan. They have two bills that put forward around that.
There you go.
Absolutely.
And that bills also talk about like forced labor, right? Child labor, that, and they saying they are showing it as China, because we have to mention that in this war, when as the world is shifting to global or energy transition, right, like shifting to green energy, that China right now, as of right now, is the number one uh, country that exports Congolese minerals. I think they own 80% of all the minerals, or minerals companies, when it comes to cobalt. 80%.
Yeah, I think it's 15 of 19, so closer to like 70, between 70 and 80%. 15 of
Yes.
19 cobalt mines owned by the Chinese. Yeah.
So if the US wants some cobalt, they
Right.
have to buy it from
From
China,
China. Yeah.
and they don't like it. You see, they don't like it. And how is that possible? And it's because, like we mentioned, the corrupt elites that is allowing that to happen. And there is really like various reports, and I know we already like an hour and 10 minutes right now, but I see we are like 340 people across platforms. And thank y'all for connecting and watching this. And we have seen these appears to be like when we call like a new group of player like stepping into the corruption game, right? Like thousands and thousands of tons of copper alone are being mined each month from really areas that are so-called presidential clan network. Because people usually on the ground, they're like, why do you see the Republican Guard around the mines? Because those mines are owned by the president and his families, right? And people don't talk about that. We're gonna go ahead and jump into and talk about uh, Apple. Let's talk about Apple, but let's also talk about the fact that Tesla is in, like you mentioned earlier, in contract with
Glencore.
Glencore,
Hmm.
direct contract with Glencore, and we have the former governor, and I think you sent me a photo of it, the former governor of Kivu. I think he's currently the Minister of Trade, I believe, Julien Paluku, who was proudly at Tesla taking photos and said, I'm in Tesla. I'm at Tesla headquarters right now," forgetting, or maybe not knowing or forgetting, that Glencore is has been found guilty, right, of corruption, has been accused. I'm just gonna use the word accused
Oh no,
of
no, they
corruption.
paid. They paid fines. They paid fines in UK,
$100 million, right? Yeah,
US, and in Brazil.
exactly.
Yeah.
They have been found guilty. I'm trying to avoid lawsuit here.
No, no,
Defamation.
you just stated the facts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have been found guilty of corruption in the Congo. But you have a Congolese official who's gonna put his feet in Tesla and probably say that I'm in Tesla right now. So think about this, brother Maurice. Like 150 trucks, and we're just talking about like a day, right? 150 trucks a day carrying copper and cobalt. And over a year, that report showed that 80,000 tons of copper. And we're talking about, in terms of money, $750 million a year in profits. That is going to one family, one clan, one tribe right now, straight into private pockets. And I'm not afraid to say those things because those things need to be said. Well,
Right.
obviously, I'm also in a free country, so I can say that. But that's the part. That's the beauty of democracy, right? That's the beauty of free speech. So when we really want to organize, when we really want to mobilize, I really, really encourage people, right, that are ready to stand for the Congolese people to dive into the Congolese politics. Don't just stay abstract. Don't just stay in what's popular. Don't just stay in what is appealing. Talking about Rwanda, it's popular. Talking about Paul Kagame, it's popular. Talking about Apple, it's popular. Investigating what's going on in the Okatanga right now in the Congo. Investigating what's going on in Lualaba province when we have a Chinese company along with families of Tshisekedi, the president, involved in essentially plundering the country. I'm really calling on friends of the Congo right now, activists, to go and do more investigations. The Katapula sites, for example, the KCC, where we have over 50 copper and cobalt depot managed by Kali Chisekedi and a Chinese national Soleil Jiang. It's out there. We have the Tilwe Zembe site that is operated by a Chinese company. I think it's called Thomas, along with Fifi Masuka, who was allegedly, because I don't believe in those elections, elected. I think she's a member of parliament, and she's also a governor, I believe, of the
Of
Lualaba.
Luaba. Oui.
Exactly, Fifi Masuka and Kali Chisekedi. Again, they own a small processing plant, and they own a processing plant that is under construction right now. We have the Jukumabwe Mwilu site, which is operated by Kali Chisekedi, again, member of the family of President Chisekedi. We have the Britain GCM, run by Jean-Claude Mulumba, who is a cousin of the President Chisekedi. We have the Biwaya site in Kapata, exploiting by J. Kamins, and you talked about Chisekedi, run by Joel Chisekedi with a Chinese partner known as Fali, and the Chinese company is named TTC. We have the Mendes site within the Bas mining concession exploited by Lebanese national Ismail Basel and Christian Chisekedi, the same person, and we're talking about the same person who used to own, allegedly, uh, some mine at the Rubaya site, which is known for the coltan. And right now, that
Mm.
Rubaya site is under the hands of the M23.
M23, occupied by
And,
M23.
and also the story behind that is that mine used to be owned by a member of parliament of the Congo, no, I can't even pronounce his name, Mwagashiku, I think, and he was arrested last year, and they said that he was in talks, secretly talking, and it was an agent of Rwanda. They arrested him, they confiscated his site, and now that site belongs to Chisekedi. That was before the M23 took over. We have the Kimbalasani site in the Boss Mining concession that sent out between 40 to 60 trucks every day under the protection of Christian Chisekedi and the Republican Guards, with the involvement of the same Chinese nationals, right? Supplying Chinese firm TTC and CCR. Like, if we talking about 48 hours, like 24/7 surveillance by the Congolese government, and I know we're out of time, but please, I
Mhm.
want to go through that list, and I have
Sure.
like three
Yes.
more. We have
No, please.
Jekamins Ramble 55, overseen by Bajito and Marcus. We have Kali Chisekedi again in the Kinsanfu, within the commit facility, with multiple depot of trade center controlled by him and other nationals, Chinese, not Chinese nationals. So what I'm trying to say is that the United States has been complaining that China is owning the Congo, and they do. We mentioned that. They have been complaining that China is involved, deeply involved in corruption. And we also argue that so is or has been the United States, and so has been the European Union. But if you really, really, really want to liberate, I'm just gonna use that term, or if you really, really don't, if you don't want Chinese to have a grip on Congo, do not support corruption in the first place. To not impose legitimate leaders in the Congo in the first place. We're talking about a country of over 100 million people that are starving, fleeing the place, their houses, that can barely drive around. Even the capital of Kinshasa, the capital of Congo, Kinshasa, you get stuck in traffic no matter what time of the day you're driving. So it's really important for us to mobilize collectively and not just stay outside and talk about what's popular, what's in the abstract. And I really want to encourage folks, when they have those initiatives for the Congo, when they have these initiatives and they're praising, yes, they're gonna sue Apple, yes, they're gonna sue Apple, but if Congo wins, the Congolese people will never see their money. And I've proven that. It's been proven already. And so, charity, Congo does not need that. Congo needs advocacy. Congo needs justice. And justice, that justice is financial, that justice is judicial. It's point blank period justice.
And without it, we won't arrive at peace. We won't arrive at the stability that we're all organizing for. So it's well stated. I think, Gaitan, we need to have a session around that, and we can really be put in the category of the role of the local elites, right? The
Yeah.
compradors, the managers. They're playing the role.
Yeah.
And the key for us is to organize in a way to, well, expose them, which you're doing and you'll continue to do, because shining a light is critical, but also mobilizing to support the folks on the front lines, who can challenge them, locally, right? That's really critical, because that's ultimately where that liberation is gonna come from, when the local people are able to hold them to account, or even assure that they don't even come anywhere near power, like they are today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're gonna close there. We have been running for an hour and
Yeah.
20 minutes, and it was
Yeah.
on the long side. But I appreciate folks tuning in today. We are 250. My God, and it's 354 souls watching this. And please don't hesitate. Continue to support Friends of the Congo. Subscribe, like, share, donate,
Absolutely.
be involved.
Yes. Be
Okay.
involved. Get involved. We have the end of the year campaign, a week to go. We support the end of the year campaign, not only in giving, if you can give, but if you can't, spread the word. Share the word. We have the campaign that's running on Instagram, on Facebook. So we encourage you to support the organizations on the front lines. 100% of the funds raised from the campaign goes to organizations on the front lines. Those in the front lines of the conflict, front lines in the mining areas, front lines in the rainforest. So we encourage you to support and join the movement. Free Congo, freecongo.org. Go to freecongo.org. You can take action in addition to donating. Outside of donating, there's a whole series of actions that you can take, and you can find out what those actions are and how you can get involved by going to freecongo.org. There's a link there that says join the movement. Click on it and connect with us. So thank you, Brother
Yes.
Gaitan. Good to be
Yeah.
on with you for this update. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to do a better job next time
It's
in
it's
getting into a
okay. It's
basement.
okay. Hey, we
Next
need
time
we need
we
to see how people need to see how hard is it to organize to
yeah.
actually do the work that we do, because we have a whole life outside, right? Outside the
Yes,
Congo,
yes,
and
yes.
you are just a proof of that, and that's more and more reason for me and for the Congolese people from the Basanja coalition to thank you for the
Mhm.
work that you're doing, and taking the time to organize and just amplify the voices of the Congolese people. So thank you,
Absolutely.
brother Moise. I appreciate you,
Appreciate you,
and
man.
yeah, and thank you guys for watching. And until next time, please like, subscribe, share, and let's
Happy
keep it going.
holidays. Yes,
Happy
sir.
holidays, happy holidays for those who celebrate, and happy end of the year. So
All right.
peace, bye.
Peace.